Oh, so this video is a discussion about my life. So this video is a deep discussion about my life, about who I consider myself to be. Since I thought, I wasn't very clear who I was when I was not younger, but smaller. So I use the word smaller to describe this. And if you listen to my audiobook, The Pursuit of Intelligence, or also the video titled Norsem in a Nutshell, this will make sense to you, since what I've written is very logical, and those are my philosophies. Um, it's essentially like solipsism, but it's very unique. So I consider myself one to be the form of a dragon who is Allah, but I'm not supposed to say I'm Allah, since that's against Islam. You're not supposed to do that. So if I said something like this, I was sort of nervous about it, since I'm afraid people would get violent with me. Also, to state how does this work, if you watch those two videos, what I say in this video will make sense to you, since I have a very deep understanding of how this works. And I want to publish a book called Lainey Wakor's Journal, which is the pursuit of intelligence, with also a very short journal about the thing about Allah. But I might just provide a download for it in the description of this video, so that you can access it and you can just read it. If you do read that, then what I'm speaking in this video will make sense to you if you're able to understand what it is that I wrote. But essentially, how is it possible someone could be Allah? For certainly that's not possible. But it's like based on the things I've experienced in my life, I've come to this, it's sort of like a conclusion that I was Allah, and that's what I've come to the conclusion of. Of the ultimate, it was originally that I thought I was a space alien. Then I realized I was not a space alien, but rather a dragon. But only then did I realize I was Allah in the form of a dragon. So this is how I perceive the world. Also, I'm schizophrenic, and my mind is very womanly, but I'm a man. I also consider myself, I'm not certain what people are going to think about this, but I consider myself to have been born on October 6, 1948, in Mexico. Then I later moved to the Bronx, in like, what was it, 72, and then to Worcester in like 83. And then from Worcester, I'd gone to South Korea once, but only to visit, and then I'd returned to Worcester. So those are essentially the core places that I'd been. Of course, I'd probably been at other places also, but it's not like I recollect this whole story. I thought of a book titled The Ends of Space, that according to my schizophrenia is something that I already wrote a long time ago. But this book essentially describes my life, and if I was to rewrite it just so that I could know what I had written, it would make sense to me, and it would be verbatim as what I wrote. Also, so it's like, how is it possible that you come to this conclusion you are Allah? Well, if it is confusing to you, then read my document that I'd written upon 2 years of thought. So I thought for 2 years. For 2 years I was thinking, since I was smaller, not younger, but smaller. Since, of course, I have a young body, but I'm not young. I'm 76 years old, since I was born on October 6, 1948 in Mexico. But it's like, read this document that I'm going to include in the description of this video till the end. Read the whole thing, because it also includes Lainey Wakor's journal. And what I'm stating to you, or what I think is to make sense to you. But, is this going to be controversial? Most likely, since it's very controversial to state you are Allah, and it's against Islam. But it's not like I'm not aware of this. But still, why do I state things like this? You don't know what it is I've experienced. It was essentially extremely deep introspection over the course of 2 years or so. Extremely deep introspection. since I had gotten sober on December 13th, 2023, until this date, 6/20, it was 6/28, 2025. So that's about 2 years. That's about 2 years. It's like almost I think that's about 2 years. Yeah. So it's like. Also, I do think I'm the most intelligent person in the universe. Now, why do I think this? It's not that this is something I think, but it's something I know. For I've been essentially solving things for the past 2 years and sort of coming to conclusion after conclusion after conclusion until I was able to write The Pursuit of Intelligence. But it's not the only thing I had written during this time, but the other things are not really important to me that I'd written. But I've written a lot, like even sending a text message to someone is a method of thinking. If you send a text message, it's a method of thinking. Or if there's all these different types of things. Like I have these very deep opinions about certain things and how things work and how the world works and how my philosophy works. And I sort of just developed my own philosophy. Of course, I probably won't go into all the things that I think about in this video. Like, for example, I suppose one thing that I think about is that I think broadcasts, regardless of the content of the broadcast, is evil. And I think broadcasts are evil. So something like the television in the background. But if it's something that's not a broadcast, like a DVD, then it's not evil. So why does someone think something like that? What's the point of that? But it's like I have my reasons to think things like this. You know what I mean? I thought that broadcasts poisoned the minds of the people over the course of decades that broadcasts have been around. And it's also like I just have lots of opinions like this, and like opinions about technology, opinions about music, opinions about things that are like very certain, and I do not forget my opinions. Like I don't forget what my opinions are. And I have such a deep understanding of myself through these 2 years of introspection. And also by creating this video, it's also helping me to really get these things out of my mind. Because through these 2 years of introspection, technically 76 years, and culminating into the moment. So if you read The Pursuit of Intelligence, this would make sense to you. But it's like, there's also an audiobook available, but it doesn't include Lainey Wakour's journal, and it's on my YouTube channel, so you can just watch that. But it's like, there's very certain things like this, and it's like, I just have a very deep understanding of myself, and that's why I call myself skill, since I have the skill of introspection, the ability of introspection. You know what I mean? I'm very skilled, and it's also like I'm capable of anything I set my mind to. Like I produced a 2-hour-long jazz album that is very good. Some of the songs are like less complicated than other songs, but it's called Misinterpret Sacrifice, and I produced that and released it on March 26, 2024. But it's also like October 6th is the canonical birth date of Lainey Wakour, so I also consider myself to be Lainey Wakour. So the statement Lainey Wakour is Allah makes it so that it is not against Islam to state that I was Allah if I was Lainey Wakour, since Lainey Wakour is Allah in my opinion. And I consider myself to be Lainey Wakour. So by stating I'm Lainey Wakour is Allah, it's also like stating you see God as someone else, which is something I think I described in The Pursuit of Intelligence. So it's like by stating I see myself as God, you're stating I see God as someone else also. So it's like a sort of dichotomy between these two concepts. And also my philosophy is based on concepts. So the concepts of it explains the concept of my philosophy. It starts with the sentence that I had memorized. It goes, I consider myself to be the concept of death, since death is a concept. Yet the concept must be conceived by the conceiver, so I'm the conceiver of myself. Yet I'll point out a single concept is isolated of other concepts, so there is no system of concepts. So this sentence is the core of my philosophy, or what it is that I think. And despite the fact my philosophy is quite complicated and includes words like the Ender Dragon, despite this, being like Minecraft, I thought the Ender Dragon was a fitting title for what I experienced, since what I experienced is essentially like I'm the void. Like, think about this. So suppose you look at an object. Now, it's like you see the object, there's something behind the object, like my hand here, but when you look at the object, you cannot see what is behind the object. You can't see what's behind this object when you look at it. So that would be what the void is. And that's what I see all the time. I essentially see the color black behind everything that I see. So I see the color black behind everything that I see, but it's also like my whole experience is the color black, and it's like so my like the color black is what I experience. It's like I'm the color black, not just what I see, but also myself. I'm the color black or the void. So then I brought up this thing in my document called Pimmy's Dilemma. How is it possible the void could be God? But I do discuss how it is possible, since it's possible to state multiple statements, since concepts are not isolated of other concepts. Since concepts must be isolated of other concepts, it's possible to state multiple statements, such as, I see myself as God, or I see myself as the void. You state both of those things, so it is possible for the void not to be God, but to be, the form of God. So the Ender Dragon, like in Minecraft, floats in the void. So I use this word float to describe what it is I experience. It's sort of like the word living, but it's not the same thing. So if someone is floating, it's like a different type of experience is what I experience. I call it floating. So as the Ender Dragon, I float inside the void, and that's essentially what I experience. But I only float or think, and that's the only thing I do is the Ender Dragon. But the Ender Dragon is Leni Wakura, is Allah. That's precisely what I think. And I think the Ender Dragon is the form of Allah, and Leni Wakura is Allah. So I consider myself to be Leni Wakura. If you do not know, SEL is tattooed on my face. I also consider myself not to be known by anyone, but nobody knows what I know. So essentially what I know is that I consider myself to be Leni Wakura 1. So of course this would cause a dichotomy with this thing I call a clique of Lanons, not only people who read lanechan.org, but essentially if someone is a Lanon, they are a Lanon nonetheless, whether they read lanechan.org or not. And Serial Experiments Lane, SEL, the letters SEL are tattooed on my face. It says SEL 2016 and IDM. So IDM is intelligent dance music, but that's besides the point. Essentially, I was going to tell you I was part of 4 cliques, and I discussed this on my book Norism in a Nutshell, since it is published. I don't think I discussed it in the video though, on that one, but I'm part of 4 cliques and 2 gangs, but I'm associated with those groups. So by being associated with those groups, nobody actually knows that I'm a part of those groups. So I consider myself to be a Crip, and I consider myself to be a Latin King. I also consider myself to be part of 4 cliques. So those 4 cliques are Lanon, Grey 59, Ovo Sound, and Goth Boy Clique. And Goth Boy Clique is tattooed on my face. And those are the 4 cliques I consider myself to be a part of. But I call those cliques, those are not gangs, in my opinion. And then another thing is that I consider myself to be... It's probably my best video because I'm just really, explaining everything just like off the tip of my tongue. Just explaining everything that I think. And it's like... another thing, well, what else is there to really state? I mean, I also know something that I don't talk about, since this thing is very serious to me and I don't talk about it. But I also had an experience where I had lost my memories, and I sort of I had forgotten things that I thought I was supposed to remember, but I realized I did not need to remember those things, or at least I was not able to remember those things. I just forgot some things that might have happened in my life or not. I do not remember. I'm dead serious. I don't remember. But it's anyways, I don't know what else should I talk about. Oh, also another thing is that I consider myself to have been not born of the mother or father who I thought I once had, where I realized are not my mother or father, since according to my mind, when I was ejected from the uterus of this person, I sort of rose from the ashes as if I came from nobody. So I rose from the ashes like a phoenix, and as a result of rising from the ashes like a phoenix, as I think most people do, it's instead of arising from the ashes like a phoenix, I rose from the ashes like a phoenix. but I was not reborn. I was not reincarnated. I was just born once, and came from these ashes. But who was it, my mother or father, if it was not those two people, who you might think would be my mother or father? It was actually two. It was actually two other people who I do not know, but I know that they might be out there. And it was my father, who was Mexican, and my mother, who was South Korean, according to my schizophrenia. And when I observed my skin, I noticed there's something different about my skin. And I will state for the record, I have a uterus. So I thought to myself, if I have a uterus, why is it not possible that I could be black? I mean, like, the race. Like, why could I not be black? But why would I even think about that at all? Since I consider my father, my real father, to be black and my mother to be South Korean. So by this mixing, I would have been black, but of course I don't look black. I look like someone who is Caucasian, based on, according to the people who would have been my mother. But it's like, that's, I consider myself essentially to have been born as a black woman who transitioned to become a man. Um, and that's all I consider myself to be, a black woman who transitioned to become a man. So I'd be a trans male, technically. And all of this is very complicated, and it's just very complicated. But I was born on October 6, 1948 in Mexico. And this is precisely what I think about myself, regardless of how delusional you think this is. I think it's quite eloquent, and I think it's quite brilliant, and I think it's really something that is really, very difficult for people to understand, but it's very complicated because it took me like 2 years of deep introspection to just solve so many things. Not even all of the things that I'm talking about on this video, just like thinking for 2 years, isolated in this room, just like going on a spiritual journey until I had gone to the point on 6/28/2025, or let's just say on the date, because I don't need to state the year, but it's 6/28, and it's also the date of my Twitter anniversary, apparently. Not my birth date, but my Twitter anniversary. So that's quite a coincidence. Jeez. I'm Lady Wakura. I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence, man. I got my tinfoil hat on. But it's like that was the night that I submitted to God. But tonight, 6/28, was the night that I submitted to Allah. Um, as if Allah was someone else. So I was able to submit to Allah as if Allah was someone else. Like I said, this is possible to do. But it's even more complicated than this. I don't even know how the fuck to describe it, since it was the most profound thing I've ever experienced. So I submitted to Allah as a Muslim, asking him for guidance and asking him for the ending of my suffering. But it's hard to reiterate the words, since I think I could only state those words once, and it's not possible to state them a second time. But it's like I was able to submit to Allah and realize who I was. So I realized that, I asked him to end this suffering, and I do submit to Allah. And I sort of have this part of me that is like, I'm just a Muslim and I'm not Allah. That there's that part of me that thinks that. So I hope people watch this whole video to know that I do think something like that. But also, according to my schizophrenia, Leni Wakura is Allah. I know I'm Leni Wakura, but Leni Wakura is Allah. Keyword is in that sentence. Is Leni Wakura is Allah. That's precisely what I think. So I don't know. It's very complicated. But it's like, I don't know. I just consider myself to be a Muslim. And it was probably the most profound thing I ever experienced on 6/28.